Wake up, Twins territory. It is Tuesday night, doing a little Twins hangout. I'm Jeremy Nygaard, joined by Seth Stows. That is a bell in the background, a town alarm, if you can hear it, signifying 9 o'clock. Seth, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
Do you hear
Except you
my
got
town
me
bell in
mid.
the background? Do you hear that or not?
I can't.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. No, you caught me mid Laffy Taffy bite, so I couldn't talk. But other than that, things are good.
Perfect. This show that we're doing this Tuesday night is the last in-season show we will have until next April. The Twins' regular season is winding down after tonight. There is just one game left at Arizona, or against Arizona, which is a day game tomorrow, and then a 4-game set at Detroit. Uh, Tonight is the last night Twins game of the year, so kind of bittersweet. Um, what we're planning on doing tonight is going for about 60 minutes and have just a few things to cover, kind of tidying up some stuff as the season winds down, and that's kind of going to be what we're planning. Now, last week we planned to go 60 minutes, and Seth talked forever, and we went
I
closer to
know.
90 minutes. So we're going to see if that will or won't happen tonight. We're going to kick off the show just by talking about some roster stuff. The Twins placed Pedro Flormon on outright waivers and was claimed by I believe, Washington Nationals. So the Twins roster dropped down to 39. The whole thing with Flormon was kind of interesting. Obviously started the year as the opening day shortstop and wasn't even a September call-up. Currently on his third option year, there was not a lot of belief that Flormon would be back next year on the 40-man roster or on the active roster, but the timing of the move to just outright a guy really with no need for roster space is kind of peculiar. Seth, what was your initial reaction to that news?
Well, my initial reaction was, wow, there's going to be a lot of excited Twins fans because Florimon, first of all, is a guy that we spent a lot of time kind of supporting a year ago. I think, we really felt that the offensive production that he put up in 2013, which wasn't great by any means, was kind of that bottom line for where, because of his really good defense, we thought his offense was acceptable, and you could make up for that with him hitting ninth. This year, he just never got going and kind of proved a lot of the naysayers right, that he just couldn't hit, and he went to Rochester and had his moments, but certainly struggled there offensively and defensively to some degree. So, but you're right. We talked a little before we went live here about the timing. And I don't know if, maybe there's some people they're trying to claim and want to have a spot available if they ever want to claim. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys get claimed and taken off the 40-man roster just in the last few days. So it may just be simply, let's give ourselves some flexibility in case something does happen.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you want to claim a guy, you claim a guy and then designate Flormon for assignment.
Right.
Without immediately filling that roster spot, there's no reason to get rid of him. The other thing is, if you have any desire to have him in the organization moving forward, even a little bit, you keep him and you purge him with the other guys. Because when everybody's doing their roster purge, guys are less likely to get taken, claimed. So the fact that they did it when they did it, it almost made me wonder, like maybe something else had happened that kind of forced their hand. That obviously that's speculation, but why they would do it when they did it makes zero sense. And I talked to one person, and I'm gonna not name any names, but we exchanged some conversation, and the final verdict was that Terry Ryan said it wasn't about the roster spot. They knew that he'd be a goner, to which I responded, well, the timing is still odd. And this person said, agreed, Terry Ryan still dismissed but it wasn't worth getting into a back and forth over it. So it just didn't. It doesn't make sense, and it almost got to the point where I'm thinking, do the Twins just not know how to manage their roster? Which, after 4 years of 90-plus losses, I haven't thought that often. I have thought it, but not like to this degree where it's like this doesn't make any sense at all. And it's nothing to beat ourselves up over because Florimon is totally replacement level on a 40-man. But it really made me think this is just not the way it should be.
Yeah, and I mean the big key point is at the end of the day, who cares? Because he wasn't coming back to the Twins. So I mean, it's almost like they were just saying, "Hey, we're gonna put you out there now. You know you're not coming back. We'll see if someone takes you. If they do, good for them." And Washington took him, and you know, it's not like they put him on their 40 or they put him on the major league roster. They're going to the playoffs, and he was with the organization after September 1st, so he wouldn't even be able to be an emergency call up for the playoffs. So I don't know. I think it's just giving a guy an opportunity. I think people really like Florimon, and this is giving him a chance to get claimed, and he did. So I
Yeah,
mean,
but
at the end
but
of the day, it just doesn't matter.
yeah, but here's the thing: if you really care for a guy, he's already been outrighted once. The Twins claimed him and outrighted him. He would be able to be a free agent regardless of anything else if he cleared outright waivers. If you want to give the guy a chance, why put him out alone where he might get claimed and not have an opportunity to choose where he wants to go, as opposed to outrighting him with everybody else so he can become a free agent on October 1st or whatever, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, elect free agency, and go where he wants. I mean, now he's going to be stuck in Washington over the winter. If you want to do the guy a favor, make him a free agent. Don't throw him on waivers. I mean,
Well,
that's going to be the process to get him there regardless, but he was more likely to clear during the roster purge than he would be a week ago. And I mean, that's the other thing where it's like they didn't do him any favor by his roster status is the same. He's a 40th guy in a 40-man roster, and the likelihood is that the Nationals will outright him off of the roster, I would think, and he could be a free agent and go wherever he wants. And not that there's going to be a huge market for him, but cut the guy some slack and let him be a free agent. Don't pass him through waivers alone. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, I don't really have much of an argument, but at the end of the day, the Twins don't want him on their roster, so he's
Right. But
there
you know
where
what?
it doesn't matter.
Then they should have done that. They should have done that when they sent him down. They should have DFA'd him. They should have outrighted him.
Well, at that time, they didn't know what they had in Santana, and Escobar hadn't really done what he had done once he was given the full-time role. So it didn't hurt to keep him around during the season. Rochester was winning, and didn't hurt for them to have him either. But once the Rochester season was done, once he wasn't called up, I mean, after that, it's all just details.
Right. And it is. And it's really nothing to get worked up about. But
Too
it
late.
bothers me. It bothers me because the timing was terrible from an organizational standpoint, in my opinion.
I got nothing, man. If that's gonna upset you, we're gonna have a long show.
Oh boy, I'm just getting started. Now let's move on. The other day, and now we're gonna stick on that 40-man roster bit. The other day, it was yesterday morning that Seth's buddy Aaron Gleeman over at AaronGleeman.com posted who will the Twins purge from the 40-man roster this season, and he outlines essentially half the roster about who may or may not stick over the offseason. So what Seth and I are going to do is we're going to take a closer look at that list. Aaron listed 19 guys, and what we're going to do is just go through first and say yes or no as to whether we think that they're going to make it through the initial purge. And that'll happen. It might even happen like a week from today. We might have more to talk about next week. But basically what every team in Major League Baseball does is they will dump a handful of guys, sometimes more, sometimes less, off of their 40-man roster as soon as the season's done. And it's basically your 0 to 3 service time players that it's just going to be we're not going to renew their contract. They'll go become typically a minor league free agent. Um, Sometimes what they'll do is they'll clear outright waivers and they'll just be part of the farm system if they haven't reached their 7 years of service in the minor league. So we're just going to go through some of these. We're going to go through all the names. First, it's just going to be, yep, I think they'll make it, or no. Maybe we should say yes, they'll be outrighted, or no, they won't. And then we'll discuss the people that we disagree on, but we'll have 3 categories: people that'll be shipped off, people that'll stay on, and then people that we disagree on that we will talk about at the end of this discussion. So we're going to just go through Aaron's list. He goes alphabetical order. So we're going to start with A.J. Octor. Seth, do you see A.J. Octor on the 40-man roster 10 days from now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that one because I say no. Seth, do you see Doug Bernier on the 40-man roster 10 days from now?
No.
Me neither. Jared Burton is an interesting case because he has a buyout, and typically the buyouts have to be either you have to take the contract or buy him out, and I think 5 days of the World Series. For this exercise, will he be on the 40-man roster in 10 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so too. Do you expect them to buy him out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later. I would agree with that.
The key point with Burton is he's not coming back.
Right. Let's just hope he's not coming back. He is the Twins closer right now.
True enough.
All right. Chris Colabello, on the 40-man or not?
I'm going to say... That's a tough one. I'm going to say yes.
Okay, we'll disagree on that one too. I'm going to say no. Logan Darnell.
Definitely yes.
I have that one as well. 10 days from now, Brian Dunsing on the roster or not?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, it will be an interesting topic when it gets closer, whether or not the Twins will go to arbitration with him if they'll tender him a contract. Eric Fryer, yes or no?
I would say yes.
I would too. Chris Herman, yes or no?
I would say no.
Ooh, disagree in the opposite way. I have him as a yes. Chris Johnson, yes or no?
No.
I also go the other way and say no, but we can talk about that. Eduardo Nunez, yes or no?
Wait, what about Chris Johnson?
I said yes.
I would say no. Okay.
I think Johnson will be on the 40-man. You don't think he will be. So we disagree.
Correct.
Okay?
Yep.
Eduardo Nunez.
Yes.
I would agree with that. Also a player that'll go to arbitration. Ooh, this might be a tough one for you. Think with your head now, all right?
Yep.
Lester Oliveros.
Yes.
I say no. Chris Parmalee.
Yes.
I would agree with that one. Mike Pelfrey.
Yes.
He'll have to be re-added to the 40-man roster because he's on the 60-man DL. The interesting thing with Pelfrey is he's under contract, so he could be taken off the 40-man. Nobody's going to claim him, and if the Twins want him, they can bring him back up. He's very Nick Blackburn-ish in his contract status. Johan Pino.
No.
We agree on that one. The first no that we agree on, I guess Doug Bernier. We'll come back and talk about that one because I have a reason why I believe he won't be. It'll be interesting to see what we say there. But right now, a no for Johan Pino. Ryan Presley. I agree with that. Stephen Pryor.
Yes.
I also agree with that. Jordan Schaefer.
Yes.
Yep. Schaefer will head to arbitration, as well as this next character, Anthony Swarzak.
Yes.
I would agree with that. And finally, Aaron Thompson.
I'll say no.
I also said no. So the list right now, as it currently stands, we agreed with both yeses. We had Burton, Darnell, Dunsing, Fryer, Nunez, Parmley, Pelfrey, Presley, Pryor. Did I say Pryor twice? Schaefer, Swarzak for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of the 19 we agreed yes on. So that leaves 8. Uh, 8 guys, and we had no's on Bernier. We agreed on that as a definite outright. We had no's on Johan Pino. Now, why do you say no on Johan Pino?
Because he's the kind of guy that's not going to get claimed by anyone, even though he's got 3 option years remaining, or 2 option years remaining. Personally, I think MLB needs to change its rules because he should have been paid and put on the Major League Disabled list. But either way, he's not going to stay on.
I guess my thing is when he's got some shoulder stuff or elbow or whatever it was, teams probably just aren't going to put a guy on their 40-man for that. I agree with where you're coming from, but at the same time, he's not worth the risk. It's like Deduno when all of a sudden he comes up with this, was it his eye deal a couple years ago?
Yeah.
And no team was going to take the chance on him. So I think both Pino, though, and Bernier, the two that we had as definite outrights, how long do you think it takes before they re-sign with the Twins on a minor league deal?
Less than 24 hours.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Those guys will be in the organization but not be on the 40.
Unless Bernier could retire. I talked to him and I did a story on him at spring training last spring. And, he talked a lot about he's going to keep playing, as long as he loves it, all that kind of stuff. And he also talked about how he and his wife had sat down and talked about it. And she's 100% behind him continuing to do it as long as he can and as long as he wants. That said, this is a pretty smart guy. He could probably continue to play AAA for another 3 or 4 years if he wants to. But I can also see him just hanging it up. So if he wants to, he'll sign with the Twins within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Pino, I think it'll be maybe even quicker than that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, too, is I don't know if it was Mike Berardino or who wrote something, but it was asking about Bernier being a manager, in the minors or a coach. And Terry Ryan had kind of dismissed that and said he still has playing to do. I overlooked Aaron Thompson. He was a no for both of us. Do you think the Twins bring him back?
I think, if he wants to, why not? He's left-handed. He's been pretty decent AA, AAA guy. He's only 27, but we talked about it when he got called up as, he was probably the 4th or 5th best reliever at best in Rochester when he got called up. So, I think you've got enough options that it's not worth keeping the 40-man spot.
Right, and he was a guy last year that was overlooked and it was a minor league free agent and then signed later in the offseason, re-signed with the Twins. I haven't watched him pitch enough lately to know how he's really done up with the Twins, but he's left-handed, so he's always going to get a shot. Moving on. So we've agreed on 11 yeses, 4 no's, or 3 no's, excuse me, and then we have 5 other players. And so with those 5 players, we'll have a little more of a discussion. We have Seth thinking that Octor, Colabello, and Oliveros will survive the purge on the 40-man. Me saying no. And me thinking that Herman and Johnson will survive the purge. And Seth saying no. So let's just start with A.J. Octor. Octor was passed over for the 40-man last year. Went to the Arizona Fall League, if I'm not mistaken. Started this year in New Britain and was moved up to Rochester, where he was good all year. and then was finally added and brought up to the Twins in September. 46th round pick out of Michigan State. Where does he fit next year? Do you think it's simply well, we'll keep him over the winter. He's valuable enough to keep a spot, and he will go back down to Rochester on his first option year? Or do you think he's got a shot to make the bullpen moving forward?
Well, I think we need to say a couple of other things. We talked about it in previous episodes. You know, you mentioned we were just talking about who's going to be in the first group that gets DFA'd within the first 10 days here. Um, the other part of it is there's going to be more at some point. We talked about Burton already. You know, they're not going to pick up his option most likely. And guys like Dunsing and Swarzak and Schaefer and
Nunez.
Nunez are arbitration guys who they may choose not to tender an offer to. So, I mean, the other half of it then is in November they're going to have to add some guys, and we've talked about that before too. There's, you know, for sure four, probably five, and you know potentially another one or two that we'll be surprised by. Um, so it's kind of a numbers game too. But for me, back to Octor, I think he would be worth keeping around. I think they thought enough of him to send him to the Arizona Fall League. I think the way that he's dominated Double A and Triple A the last couple of years with really good numbers. You know, and he did struggle in the second half, and what we're seeing now probably is not what he was pitching like early in the year. I think they have enough on him to say he can be a guy that can pitch sixth and seventh innings. I don't think anyone's thinking he's going to be an eighth or ninth inning guy in the big leagues, but I think there's enough there that says he can be that sixth or seventh inning type of guy.
But is that worth a 40-man spot when you have a number of those players that could probably fit in that role?
Well, it depends on all the other moves. You know, I mean, if Swarzak's gone, then absolutely he should stick. I mean, I know he's old for a guy that just got his debut, but he's only 26. Whereas a guy like Swarzak's 30. They may choose to go, you know, with Octor instead of Swarzak. To me, that's a guy that you might want to give a little extra thought to, and you're not just going to drop the day after the season ends.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine with that. If they want to keep him for, you know, through the initial purge, my personal belief is it's easier to get guys through if you do it right away than if you choose to do it later. You know, just for reference sake, the Twins outrighted, it looks like 5 or 6 guys immediately after the season last year, and then outrighted Wilkin Ramirez 3 weeks later, and then Pedro Hernandez 2 days later. So, you know, 2 days after Ramirez. So they, you know, outrighted 2 more guys later in October. Yeah, I mean, I could see Octor going both ways, and keeping him on, you know, certainly wouldn't be a terrible idea. I just think with the abundance of middle relief arms that he's a guy that was going to go. Next guy you also have moving or staying on that I had coming off is Chris Colabello. Defend keeping him on the 40-man roster when you're already keeping Parmalee, Mauer obviously, and Vargas.
Well, you look at it, and I think some of his weaknesses were exposed again this year after his hot start. But I think, you know, I don't know if he's a guy that would get claimed, but it never hurts to have guys with power. You know, and I'm not saying he's hit a lot of home runs, but he's got power. That's why I would probably keep him. He's an interesting case because Florimon was already outrighted. And another one that we disagreed on was Chris Johnson, like Colabello, was on the 40-man roster and didn't get called up. You know, so I'm not saying it's a no-brainer on any of these that we're disagreeing with. Maybe there's some bias coming into play on this. I think they should keep I mean, he's got options. I just don't see a reason to get rid of him right away. You know, maybe by the time you're calling up guy or you're adding guys to the 40-man roster, you realize you need a spot or two. It definitely doesn't hurt to have a guy or two that you might be able to drop at that time or not. You know.
Yeah, I guess for me, him not getting recalled was or added in September call-ups was obviously, kind of a red flag. Um, I think the reason that they would let him go is to kind of pursue what he wants to do. I think we're also going to see Guardy get tossed again if you're watching the game live. Ooh, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Um, but for me, I like the story a lot. The Colabello story is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. I mean, it's the same story as Pino. You get your first opportunity at age 29, at 30. Even Chris Johnson to some degree, even though he was a first round draft pick, he overcame a lot to finally get called up at 29. I mean, there's some good stories like that. They often are short lived, and maybe that's happened already. But the guy that's got that much power, I'd have a hard time just dropping him. But you're right. I mean, you've got Mauer, you've got Vargas. We're already talking about probably keeping Parmalee at least through spring training again. There are only so many spots.
Right, and I would certainly. I, Calabello would be a guy that if I had room on my 40 man, I'd leave him there. And I I wouldn't have an issue with making room by getting rid of him. But if I don't need to get rid of him, I would have no issue keeping him around because, like you said, he does offer power. He could be Rochester's first baseman all next year,
Right.
and nobody's gonna be upset with that because he's a really good AAA baseball player.
Well, and he's a
Um,
guy that can come up, and we've seen what he can do for a couple weeks. I mean, he has the ability to hit at the major leagues. Can he do it
right,
consistently and over a long period of time? I don't know, but it doesn't hurt to have a guy who can flat out hit AAA pitching to come up for short periods of time.
right. That's for sure for certain. Moving down the list, Chris Herman. I have Chris Herman as a guy that's going to make it through. I'm basing that on the fact that the Twins seem to like him an awful lot, playing him in the outfield, uh, calling him up, I think, on three different occasions this year. Gardy loves his versatility, and if Gardy's around, I think Herman's just a guy that he would keep. But it seems like his stock has dropped a little bit, and that would be enough of a reason for you to think that he's not going to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, when we did this, I kind of hemmed and hawed for a while. We obviously didn't spend a lot of time prepping for this, so it was kind of in the moment. But I mean, certainly he hasn't really hit a whole lot over his time in the big leagues the last 2 years or even 3 years. But I do think the versatility is more valuable than a lot of people think. I'm a big Chris Herman fan. I think what he's done at AAA is okay. Certainly not great there, but his ability to be a catcher, to play both corner outfield positions, um, a guy who's going to be willing to play a role at this point. The problem is you've got Escobar, and is he going to be a utility guy? Nunez is a utility guy. We've already talked about Jordan Schaefer being a guy that we think is going to come back. Um, I just think you add all that together, plus Parmalee and Arcia and whatever that's going to happen with Hicks. I mean, I just think you run out of opportunities for him to play.
Certainly, I think that's exactly right. Uh, but at the same time, being a guy that can sort of catch makes me think that there might be enough value to keep him. Again, like Colabello was on your side of the thing. If they don't need to make room right then, maybe he can stick around a little bit longer. And I would put Herman in that same boat. I think we'll probably end up putting all those guys in the same boat. They wouldn't necessarily have to be outrighted immediately, but could certainly find themselves in that situation relatively soon after the month progresses. The next guy is Chris Johnson. I kept him on. Uh, Johnson was phenomenal in Rochester early this year, and still has options left, if I'm not mistaken, and can serve that role as sixth, seventh, eighth starter potentially for a major league team, all the while being left-handed, which I think is a big deal. And as a guy that's had some success, for him it's mostly been at the AAA level, but he's bounced back from a lot of things. And I just think he's worth getting him in, whatever you want to do with him this winter, getting him into spring training now that he knows the organization, it's not new, and having him compete for a spot. Um, and if that fails, if he fails as a starter, there's always an opportunity to be a left-handed relief guy. So for me, I would keep him. I wouldn't even put him so much on the borderline. For me, he should just be on the 40 man.
And I don't really have a problem with that. I also think that Sean Gilmartin's a guy that's going to get added to the 40-man roster. I personally think Dunsing will be back. Thielbar will be back. We already took Thompson off. I think Logan Darnell, it sounds like, is being groomed to be more of a reliever. We've talked so much about all these pitching options that they have for next year that would be ahead of him already. I'm not saying it'd be bad to keep him, but I think when the numbers crunch does come down, I'd just be surprised if he makes it, despite the fact that he's been one of the best pitchers in AAA the last 2 years.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and you're definitely right with Gilmartin. Um, that'll be interesting to see what plays out. I think he makes it through the purge though for sure, and then I think he'll make it. I think he'll still be on the 40 man when spring training rolls around in March. Next guy on the list, and this one is Lester Oliveros, who you have a thing for. He dominated, and as of late, he's been absolutely brutal. And for me, same as Octor, in my opinion, these guys were added to see what they offered moving forward. Both struggled. Oliveros has been outrighted before, so he could elect free agency, which is probably good for him. I definitely think the Twins would have interest in bringing him back, but I just don't know that they want to spend an offseason with him taking up a roster spot when he didn't prove anything during his time up here now at the end of the season.
Yeah, but I also consider the fact that he had 88 strikeouts in 66 innings this year in his first year back from Tommy John surgery. I think it's fair to expect that in September his arm's probably about done. I mean, clearly what we're seeing at the big league level this year, we talked about this last week too, or maybe the week before, maybe a few times. There's no way that he didn't have a breaking pitch, a successful AAA breaking pitch, and was just throwing 96-mile-per-hour fastballs in AAA, because that wouldn't have been successful there either. So to me, there's something that just he's not. I don't know if he's just tired or what, but when you got
Okay,
96, I'd take a chance.
and that's fine, but based on what you just said, the right route, the best route for Oliveros would have been it's the end of the season that he's coming back from Tommy John surgery. Instead of calling the guy up to in September to make a move, why don't we hold off, let him rest, call him up in November when we need to, not have that roster spot taken, and if he's going to be on the 40 man, we'll do it then with and letting himself letting him have a break for his arm.
I don't know. I mean, he pitched really well. He deserved a September call-up.
And I'm not saying that he didn't, but the fact is, at some point, you have these guys that have had arm issues that you want to take care of their arm, and you shut guys down, and you don't throw guys. And if Oliveros, if his arm being tired is going to be why we excuse a poor performance, then he shouldn't have been playing.
Well, and maybe that's the case. He's still throwing 94, 95, 96, so he's not. I'm just saying that might be one reason. Clearly, he's just not getting a breaking ball over it. I don't know if that's mechanical or if that's tired or what, but I mean, for whatever reason, he can't get a second pitch over, and his fastball's not moving a whole lot. So,
Right, and
either
teams are
he's a
seeing that.
completely different pitcher now than he was a month ago, or he just never was that good. And if that's the case, well, that's fine. Take him off the roster. But there's just too much there and too much power in that arm to just take a shot.
Right. Well, we will see. We will see in a week when this all goes down. Hopefully, in a week we'll have answers on part of the coaching staff and part of the 40-man roster. Let's move away from that now to something we do a little bit better, and
Can
that's
I make
talk.
one final point on that?
Yes.
It'll be quick. The five guys that we disagreed on, after they add the Sano's and Gilmartin and Meyer and whether it's Goodrum or Rosario, whoever else gets added, the five we talked about, if they're on the 40-man roster, they're going to be numbers 36 through 40, and those
Right.
are the guys that the Twins should try to be improving upon via free agency or in the Rule 5 draft. That doesn't have to happen next week. It can happen anytime through the off season. So I
Right.
think one thing, those of you that are listening, do this exercise, but think about it of whether or not you think they'll be there in spring training, because that's really when it really matters.
Right. For certain. And I guess too, when you do that exercise, there's a very good chance that guys that we're saying will not be on the 40-man will still be in spring training. Guys like Doug Bernier, guys like Johan Pino, guys like if Octor were to make it through and not be on the 40-man, just for an example, using AJ Octor, he will be in big league spring training. Um, so, I mean, there's a lot of variables that play into an
Right.
exercise like this.
And even the guys that we know will be around in 1 week, I mean, we don't know if they'll get tendered a arbitration contract, or maybe they'll be able to buy out Mike Pelfrey, or I don't know that Eduardo Nunez is going to get offered arbitration. I mean, that's not going to happen next week, but I guarantee a couple of those guys aren't going to be there in November.
Right, for certain. Let's move forward to, like I said, something we do a little bit better. If you visited Twins Daily today at 10:52 today, when Seth was quote working, he posted his part one prospect list, and it's just 10 guys. It's 41 through 50, and I haven't even began to think about that. Um, but we're just going to go down the list. Number 50, he has 17-year-old Luan Diaz, the guy that signed out of the Dominican that had some, U.S. experience playing in some showcase stuff. Um, Signed for over $1 million. Actually played pretty well, despite getting off to a pretty slow start. Um, 50. You feel good about that one at number 50?
Well, not really, because typically I don't have DSL guys on this list. I usually wait until they get to the U.S., but I needed one more spot, and as a 17-year-old with that kind of power, he should maybe even be higher.
Yeah, without seeing Seth's 1 through 40, just looking at Luan Diaz and seeing him at 50, I would say I would definitely have him higher. Um, I like number 49. 49 is Ryan Eads. Eads was a second round pick out of LSU who was much better in the second half at Cedar Rapids and really helped them make the playoffs in the Midwest League. Um, Finished 10-11 with a 5.14 ERA. He was not in Baseball America's top 30, and Seth has him at 49 as a 22-year-old in low A baseball. You feeling good about Ryan Eads at 49?
Well, I think it does a couple of things. One, it shows that just because you're a high draft pick, you don't necessarily move up as fast as we thought, even as a college pitcher. Secondly, I think if he's your 49 prospect, you're still sitting pretty good, because I believe that he's got three pitches. He just is really inconsistent, even from inning to inning.
Right. Yeah, he's a guy that I was down there and watched him. He's not even a guy that does anything. Like you could watch him pitch for 7 innings and he'll not blow you away a single time. But then you could look up at the scoreboard and say, wow, he's only given up 3 hits and no runs. Doesn't throw super hard. Uh, a guy that I think might just kind of lay in the weeds for a while before he sneaks up on us. So, um, I don't know that I would have him in my top 50, and that's just totally not even looking at the list, but just kind of thinking relative to where he would fit with these other guys. But a guy that could move up and just be a solid prospect for the next few years. It'll be interesting to see how he does adjusting to the Florida State League. At 48, you have the 2014 11th round pick Tanner English, who is from South Carolina. Um, Played at Elizabethton, had a shoulder issue, and then was promoted to Cedar Rapids for the playoffs and played pretty well. The thing about Tanner English was his during the draft had he there were some that believed that his glove was major league ready and that his bat wasn't and may never be. 48 for a guy that played half season in rookie ball and low A. You're pretty confident in your placement of Tanner English?
I mean, it's really hard to pick the 2014 or to place the 2014 draft picks, especially the college guys, because they should perform well at Elizabeth. And but at the same time, I believe they're adjusting to wood bats. They're adjusting to life as a professional, getting paid, meeting a ton of new people, understanding so much that they don't have to worry about in college. So it's really hard to place these guys. But yeah, I think at 48, he's a guy that could move up really fast.
Yeah, and he for me I would probably have him a little bit higher than that. Probably not in a top 30, but somewhere, I mean really once you get outside the top 30, what's the difference between 30 and 50? So I'm not going to disagree with that one too much. Number 47, Jonathan Hinoyoso. Is that how you pronounce that?
Sure.
Yeah, we don't really know. Missed some times with the PED suspension, came back, uh, actually was brutal, got called up to Cedar Rapids, got suspended, came back, and then he was unbelievable in the end of the season. So for me, I'm still going to call him a non-prospect. I wouldn't have him in my top 50, but you have him at 47.
Yeah, and there's a couple things. I mean, power is clearly something that, to some degree, obviously you can add, but at the same time, I mean, some people are just born with it. And speed is another one. And I mean, Josa's in there because of his speed, and he's obviously a good glove. He's got just, I mean, 23 out of 27 stolen base attempts. When he puts the ball on the ground, he has a chance to beat out pretty much anything. And obviously he's already 22, which is why he's no higher than this on the list. He's still at the low levels, and right now he may be 150 pounds. If he got up to 170, maybe even 175, I mean, you add a little bit of doubles power and that kind of stuff, and maybe you got something. But I mean, obviously there's a lot of room for growth here.
Right, and he's a guy that has been in the system for a lot longer than
Forever.
we realize, and I'm going to try to check this up. He's actually eligible for the Rule 5 draft for the first time this year. I don't think he would be. Um, he was eligible maybe last year. He's a free agent after
Yeah, I think
2016. So he's not a guy that's going to get picked, but a guy that, internationally has been, international wise has been in the organization for a long time. He was a $100,000 bonus when he signed in 2009. So, um, yeah, I don't see him being this high, but not being able to see your prospect, I don't know where you hit. Not being able to see your list, I don't know where he stacks up, against the other prospects, shortstop wise. So, um, off the cuff, I would say I would probably not have him in my top 50, but you can be wrong on that guy, but you're definitely wrong on number 46. You have Max
your
Murphy
guy.
at 46. You are probably about 30 spots too low on this guy, in my opinion.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that I heard was that when the Twins drafted him in the round that I correctly predicted them to draft him, that I heard, some talking to a couple of people that scouts would see him and thought he should have been a second rounder or a third rounder. and then he went to Cedar Rapids where he wasn't great, but played a ton of baseball this year. And what he did in Elizabethton, you just don't see dudes do very often. So he's a guy that I'm gonna watch closely, obviously, because I think he's gonna be a stud. But 46 to me, when I saw it, I was like, "God darn it, you did that on purpose just to rub me."
Well, there was probably some of that too, but I mean, you also look at it. How much sample do we have to go on Murphy to this point? He was tremendous. I mean, he was the Appalachian League Hitter of the Year this year, and he only played 35 games there before playing another 32 or something in Cedar Rapids. He had a long season, and obviously he did well at Elizabethton, but I mean, like Tanner English, Max Murphy's a guy who could just skyrocket up this list when I see some more reports or read some more things on him or talk to more people. Um, but I mean, just think about this: a year earlier, Mitch Garver was their ninth round pick, and I don't think anyone ever would have thought of putting him on a top 50 list a year ago. Now, I'm not saying they're the same player. I mean, Garver was a 4-year senior. You know, Murphy's a local guy from Minnesota kind of stuff. But, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of sample size to go on some of these guys.
Right. Yeah, I'll forgive you for this time. 45, DJ Dalton Hicks. Um, Definitely not in your top 50 last year. At least I wouldn't think so.
I think he was
I
top
could see
30.
him. He was in your top 30.
I would think so.
Ugh. We really need to reevaluate your lists, I think. Hicks he's an older dude. He's 24. He was at Fort Myers. He had a good second half and got a lot of power, but gets overshadowed by the other studs that have he's been playing with. So, 45, first baseman. I don't think I'd even have in my top 50 to be honest, but defend that ranking.
Well, I had him at 29 last year, and he was decent again this year. I mean, again, he's got huge power. He, as much as stat people don't want to think about, he's a huge run producer, a middle of the lineup guy. Um, yeah, I think he's a legit decent hitter too, you know, with doubles and such. First baseman, um, power. He is 24 already, so I mean he's certainly not going to be a top 20 guy at this point. But I mean when you're getting down into these numbers, as we said earlier, the difference between number 32 and 47 is not much, you know. So
The
um,
difference between 29
matter of
and
place. To
45.
me, this is the guy that should be much higher.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he does have the ability to hit the ball out of the ballpark, and he always seems, not that you can measure, but he always seems to be on winning teams. I don't know. I'm trying to defend you here, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time. Let's just move on.
You have to
40.
imagine him not being on the top 50.
God, see, I have a hard time imagining him being in my top 50.
Put together your
But
list for next week. We'll discuss.
I'm gonna have to make a list. That's what I'm doing all weekend now, making a list. 44, Jason Kanzler. I'm good with that. You know what? That's exactly where I would probably have, maybe not at 44, but this exact part of the list. So I don't
Yeah,
even know
and I
if we
mean,
need
you
to
look at
talk
the
more
year
about him.
he had in his first. Well, I mean, it was his
He's a
first
stud.
pro season. He was a 4-year college guy.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Can you hear me or not?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the defense is great. He's got good power. He strikes out a ton. He steals a lot of bases. I mean, he's a pretty solid all-around guy. He's probably a better player than his prospect ranking would say because he's 24 already. But again, it's one of those things like, you know, Brian Dozier's a guy that went to college for 4 years and he made it and he
Right.
turned out fine. And I often think that when you look at prospect lists, if a guy goes to college for 4 years, he's going to get overlooked in terms of prospect status because he's already going to be 23, possibly 24 in that first year of pro ball. And fair or not, that's what sometimes people get their prospect rankings based on. The reality is, I think Jason Kans's a guy that without the strikeouts, if he can cut that down, he's got a chance to be a pretty decent, say, fourth outfielder in the big leagues.
Could you see? Now, I guess here's where I look at this. I look at the future of the outfield. Buxton's going to be at center when we don't know. Hicks is a giant question mark. Jordan Schaefer fits great as a fourth outfielder. Jason Kansler could be Jordan Schaefer soon. Don't you agree?
Well, I mean, I think defensively he's right there.
Probably better.
Speed-wise, he might be a step behind, and
I would agree.
strikeout putting the ball in place. So, I mean, yeah, right now maybe not, but yeah, within a year or two, sure.
Yeah, I would think by this time next year, we would have a pretty good idea if Jason Kansler could be a fourth outfielder in the major leagues.
Right.
And I think his mentality is he's never going to be a fourth outfielder. He's going to be a starting center fielder. And I think that's the type of guy that you want on a roster. So, Schaefer's exceeded expectations by a ton and enough that he should probably be on the roster next year. But, he's going to continue to get expensive. And if we're moving into 2016, Buxton solidified himself as a center fielder. You hope that Hicks has solidified himself in left field, RC in right field. You need that guy that can play the positions and do the fourth outfielder, fifth outfielder job, and he could be a guy that could do that. But that's why he fits where he does on these prospect lists, and I think that it's hitting it on the head.
But herein lies the difficulty of doing a prospect list. Jordan Schaefer would have been a top 5 prospect on pretty much every major league team's top 5 prospects when he was coming up. So, sometimes those top guys become fourth outfielders, and sometimes guys that you rank in the 40s become good fifth outfielders.
Right. Schaefer will, if Schaefer was projected to be who he is today, nobody was putting him in the top 5 anywhere.
Correct.
So, I mean, I'm projecting Kansler to be Schaefer right now, not the prospect that Schaefer was.
Right.
Okay. 43, Rainey Silva, catcher in the GCL. Did MLB just put him in like the Twins top 25?
Someone was saying that. I think we read that on the Twins Daily forums, but I mean, for me, this is the other end of the spectrum. You've got guys who have done it, who have produced, like Dalton Hicks, like Jason Kansler, who are just older, and that's why they're in this category. They're probably better ball players, certainly. Whereas Silva's a guy who's only 18, and he really hasn't hit yet, despite his youth in the GCL. But he ended up strong, and he's projected to be a pretty decent glove at a position where obviously being strong defensively is pretty important. So I think this is the range for a young guy who has a chance to potentially move up on this list, but hasn't done enough to be up higher on this list yet.
Right. I saw when you put him at 43. I think that's a fair place to put him. And that was before I even saw the video of Parker's buddy trying to catch a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and taking it off the top of the shoulder, which was hilarious if you haven't seen. That was classic. That was fantastic.
Explicit thing on the Twins Daily page, but definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, fantastic. So I mean, if he's strong defensively at 18 and can get it done even a little offensively, we talked about him a couple weeks ago. We both had him as our 4th best catching prospect, and at 18, I think that was completely fair to do. But I like where you have him in the 40s. I think that's a fair assessment. 42 must be your biggest dropper, Felix Jorge, who started the year at Cedar Rapids and was you said struggled immensely. I would just say brutal. Before coming back and winning the Appy League Pitcher of the Year. He's going to have to go back to Cedar Rapids, but with far lower expectations.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of different things with this. I still feel like this is too low for him because he is just 20, and he does have that slight lanky build that you see in pitchers. Also, he made it through the entire year healthy, which is difficult to do, as we saw this year. He just struggled so much at Cedar Rapids, and even though he did well at Elizabethton, he did really well last year at Elizabethton, so he kind of ends this year at the same place. The other thing that kind of pushed him down here is you consider after he got sent down from Cedar Rapids to Elizabethton, they called up Lewis Thorpe, Fernando Romero, Chi Hu, Steven Gonsalves, Matt Batts, and probably some other pitchers, and left Jorge down in Elizabethton. So that also tells me that whether it's long term or not, several guys have passed him.
Right. Yeah, I don't know that I could have him as low as 42. Um, outside of the top 30, I don't even know if I could make that big of a jump. Um, but at the back half of the top 30, or the back end of it, 28, 29, I could see him fitting somewhere there. Uh, but I mean, expectations will be lower, but there's still a ton of potential there, and he could jump back up in a hurry with the rebound year at only 20 years old. And then finally, at
Right.
41, you have Brett Lee, who is one of the guys that we both thought would be sleepers. I think Baseball America had him listed as a sleeper. Um, his stats were fantastic. 10-5 with a 2.45 ERA. Struck out 9.9 batters in E-Town in 2002. In Cedar Rapids, you have that he went down to 7. And then this year at Fort Myers, only 4.6. So he's not striking anybody out, the lefty that played in Fort Myers. You still have him at 41. Um, I think there's still hope for him, but yeah, I think you got this one pretty close.
Yeah, and again, this is another one. I had Jorge at 19 last year, and now he's at 42 right now, and that's again subject to change by the time we get the prospect handbook out and we've learned more. But Brett Lee, I had at 27, dropped him to 41. He, like you said, I mean that's what I wrote, so I completely agree with it all. But I've seen him. I think he throws fairly hard. He's low 90s. And he's got a good slider, good curveball, and a decent changeup. So he's got the pitches. Ultimately, I think I dropped him not because I don't think he can start, but because I think long term his role will be in the bullpen
And you hate
and
relievers.
kind of in that Logan Darnell, Brian Dunston, Caleb Thielbar type of role.
And you hate relievers, so you never rank them high.
To some degree, although when we look at this list, you'll notice that's somewhat changing.
Yeah. So to reiterate what happened about Brett Lee is I read what Seth wrote, and then Seth agreed with it because it's what he wrote.
I know. I'm like, what am I going to add to this? I wrote it.
Well,
And by the way, just for those of you listening, I only reposted. This was actually posted at like 2 o'clock in the morning. But then when things started passing it by, I moved it up on the page by moving the posting time later. So I do actually work when I'm at work, and I work on this stuff when I'm at home.
that was true because I read it when I woke up, which was before 6.
Thank you.
I did read it. I read it this morning before I went to school. So that's what he see. That's what Seth does. He does these sneaky things that I don't even realize because I'm not behind the scenes at Twins Daily. I'm just at the website like everybody else. Um,
Not very
okay,
often.
so we hit that. Let's talk about the Arizona Fall League. What was the news that came out of the Arizona Fall League?
Well, it was interesting because one night late last week, Zach Jones actually tweeted that he was excited to have the opportunity to go back to the Arizona Fall League. Um, if you recall, last year he went there and he pitched okay until he lost feeling in his fingers and his fingers were cold, and we ended up finding out he had the surgery this spring when they found an aneurysm in his shoulder. So he came back, he pitched really strong. He was throwing 98 in the championship series. But we didn't know what the other side of that move was until the next day when we learned that Mason Melitakis, when he got down to Fort Myers to start preparing for the Arizona Fall League, was still experiencing a little bit of soreness in his elbow, which of course is concerning. But anyway, they did the right thing by kind of shutting down Melitakis and sending Zach Jones. So some good news for Jones. Hopefully, no bad news for Melitakis. Hopefully, it's more just
Precaution.
precautionary.
Yeah. It surprised me when they named Melitakis in the first place. So
Because he was on my list and I knew he would,
no, because
and you just didn't agree with me.
he had a bum elbow, and they should rest a guy when he's not feeling good, just like they should have rested Oliveros in the month of September so he didn't get lit up like a Christmas tree and disappoint his buddy Seth.
Right.
Are you sleeping okay, knowing that Oliveros is just completely sucky?
I'm just fine.
Well, it's because you've been working since.
Let's be honest. How much Twins baseball have you and I watched in the last couple weeks?
Does the hour tonight count?
Yeah.
Like an hour.
All right.
No, I mean I turn the games on when I get home from football. I went to the game on Sunday with my family. It was lovely. We stayed until my kids wanted to watch the mascot race, so that was inning 5. And then we walked around, and my daughter tried to get the $20 that she found in the pro shop that she told the cashier that she found, and the cashier said she would hold it in case anybody came back for it. And then she went back in the 5th inning to see if anybody came back for it, and the lady's like, "No, but we have to hold it for the rest of the game." It's like, seriously.
Crazy.
Try to teach a kid a lesson.
My new thing.
But whatever. Okay,
well,
your thing is what?
The kid did the right thing.
Right. But what's your thing?
But then she should get the money.
Your thing is to keep the money?
Well, I probably would because I'm a horrible person. But, your daughter did the right thing, but it's too bad.
Right. Well, then she was upset, and I like reiterated to her that she did the right thing, and by doing the right thing, you should feel better about it, but you won't always be rewarded for it. And then I gave her $20.
Aw.
So she wins. I think I lose. I don't know.
Yeah.
She
my thing is I'll have the Twins game on, but it'll be on mute, and then my new thing right now, well, for a while, has been to watch the HBO TV shows.
Yeah, True Detective. Watch it.
Player. So yeah, I watched The Sopranos, and I just finished yesterday 6 Feet Under, which was awesome. So now I'm trying to decide whether to watch The Wire or Big Love or Oz or what I'm going to start with next. So
can you watch True Detective?
Any suggestions, please feel free to tweet me.
Can you watch True Detective?
Maybe.
That if you have HBO Go right now or HBO on your TV?
No.
So how are you watching HBO shows?
The old ones are on the Kindle Fire through Amazon Prime.
Oh.
For free.
True Detective is fantastic if you can get your hands on those episodes.
I'll have to check on that.
But
the other thing to remember, though, is that the new season of Parenthood starts on Thursday.
And that is a life changer for you.
That's awesome. Good stuff.
See, I'm more of a Blacklist kind of guy. We watched the first episode of that one last night. That's a good show. NBC, Monday nights.
See, I used to be really pathetic in my earlier adult life, post-college. Like, I had, every night of the week, I'd have a list of the different shows I needed to watch, and then I'd watch what I'd watch live, and then I'd tape the other shows, and then watch them after that. Like, every night was ridiculous. And now it's like I want to watch The Big Bang Theory and Parenthood, and that's about it, even though when I start getting into some other shows, I kind of like them.
Yeah, and then you know what they do? They cancel them.
I know.
All the good shows get canceled anyway, so you might as well just watch them on Netflix after they have like 4 seasons.
That's kind of true.
And then just binge watch them like I watched Breaking Bad and caught up in Weeds. Weeds was funny.
See, that's where I started with this. Is I started watching. I don't remember what the first one was, but I watched Breaking Bad in not very long. That was
Uh-huh.
unreal. And then I watched Weeds because that was like kind of the same principle, but at the same time totally different.
Right?
And I mean, I've watched so many different shows, and that's the way to do it too.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
you know
know.
what you should do? You should clear your schedule and you should watch Lost.
Someday I'll do that. The first one I did, though, you'll appreciate, was Friday Night Lights.
See, I never watched
They
that. My
had the
wife.
full seasons that you could buy at like Walmart or Target or whatever for like $10.
So you bought them all?
Well, and like the first season I bought and I watched in like a weekend.
Isn't
And then
Friday
the
Night?
second season came out like 6 months later and watched that whole thing.
So did it bother you that the one dude that played football then became like the bad guy in Breaking Bad?
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, the dude, the very, very end, the guy that shot the kid when they were stealing the stuff in Breaking Bad, he was like the running back in Friday Night Lights.
Riggins?
What was his name?
Riggins?
I don't know. He maybe wasn't the main running back. He was the D bag in Breaking Bad. I can't think
Oh.
of his name. He's the guy that Jesse strangled out at the very end of the show.
Oh, okay.
The guy that they were all working
So
for, that
yeah,
guy's
clearly
uncle.
it didn't bother me.
Didn't bother you. See, and I saw like
No.
now Nancy Botwin from Weeds. She was
Yes.
Reddington's ex-wife in the blacklist.
Wow.
Just showed up yesterday. Crazy, huh?
We like
And
her.
yeah, she's hot. And and her crazy brother-in-law, what's his face? The guy with that gets his toes bit off by the dog. What's his Botwin? What's his first name?
I don't remember. It was like 6 months ago.
He uh he came back and was Mitch's co-worker in Modern Family. How about that?
Did not know that.
It's crazy. All right. Well,
You think more people will like us because we talked about non-baseball stuff now?
if people lasted this long, I think we actually have more live viewers once we started talking about not baseball. Oh, well, then we just lost one because we started talking about baseball again. We should
Yeah.
congratulate Kenny Vargas and Jose Barrios for being named the minor league hitter and pitcher of the year. Um,
Any surprise with those?
Only in that I thought maybe Vargas had played too much and that he wouldn't get it because he wasn't, you know, in the minor leagues the whole year. But no, I mean they were clearly the best minor league hitter and minor league pitcher, so good for the Twins for doing it right.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it was the obvious choice. I mean, frankly, I'd pick Vargas second behind Garver because Garver hit better the whole year, played an extra month and a half, and didn't have a huge slump during the middle of the year like Vargas did right before he got called up to the big leagues. But frankly, I mean, you know that the Twins are going to go with the guys that are the names, and Mitch Garver isn't the name that Kenny Vargas is right now. So, I mean,
Right.
it was probably an easy choice for the Twins, and I don't think anyone can question the Barrios choice.
Right. No, Barrios was hands down the guy. Um, One last thing before we call it the night. We didn't answer any questions, so maybe I should open one of those up. Um,
Should. While
oh,
you're
one
looking
thing.
at that, can I say congratulations to the Talk to Contact fellows on episode 100? And so, congratulations to the Place brothers, E. Rolf and Paul, to Cody Christie, and to Jake Horn on 100 episodes. And I don't know if any of them have actually been on more than like 90 of them, but that's still pretty good. Um, I remember the first podcasts I ever did were in about 2005. And we're on what, episode 44? And I know I had done, 2 or 3 or 4 podcasts a week for several years, and then I was on a few before that. It's a lot of work to do this. I mean, granted, you and I just kind of show up and start talking, and that probably shows, to those that actually listen. But it's a commitment to do this, and to get to 100, I think, is actually worth noting. So as much as I give those guys a hard time, and we do that because we like them a little bit,
We do.
they're pretty good.
We do.
Congratulations.
And if you like Eric a lot, you should definitely add him to Snapchat because he will totally make you uncomfortable with some of the things he sends.
Wow.
If you're into that. Question from Andrew Walter, Seth. This is for you. When the Twins had a double A team in New Britain, who was your favorite unaffiliated writer?
Yeah, I gave this one a lot of thought, and I'm going to pick a guy named John, and I know I'm going to butcher the last name, John Bielsanobla, something like that. You ever heard
Okay.
of John Bielsanobla?
No, is he better than Andrew?
I'm just kidding. I've never heard of anyone other than Andrew, and Andrew's pretty good. So of course it was Andrew.
Oh, I was gonna say if the guy's better than Andrew, he can have my vote too. Just kidding, Andrew. Andrew once got the whole Midwest in an uproar about wanting and needing to trade Glenn Perkins.
Yeah, that was a lot of comments to that article.
Yeah, it's fantastic. He also this is unconfirmed, but he also ate at the Cats welcome thing with Alex Wimmers, and then Alex Wimmers' arm basically fell off. So that may or may not have been Andrew's fault.
It's
Um,
quite possible.
it's unconfirmed, so believe what you want. Another question came from Rob Monroe asking if I'll ever be good at RFL again. And basically, what RFL is it's Rob's fantasy league, and it's a league where you take one Twins pitcher and one Twins hitter a week, and then you can't use him again for the following 2 weeks. So basically, you can use the guy every 3 weeks. And for the last 2 years, I was awesome, and this year I was pretty brutal. Like I'm way behind. I think there's like 12 or 13 people, and I'm in like ninth place, and I'm like 100 points out.
Wow.
So my guess is I'll probably win it next year, and they can all shove it, but who really knows?
Right.
Um, I was too busy trying to focus on draft stuff the whole beginning of the season. That's my excuse. Question from John Williams. This is the last one we have that I see. If you guys had to fill the pen from within, who would be in the pen to start 2015?
Well, I think with the news that Glenn Perkins had been shut down with his forearm issues, yeah, we certainly hope Glenn Perkins is in it. I think Casey Fiend will be in there. I do think Brian Dunsing and Caleb Thielbar will be there. I think Michael Tonkin will finally get that opportunity to be there full year. I really don't think Swarzak comes back. So, I mean, what are we at? There's like six that I've named. I think Ryan Presley will still be around. Part of what we talked about with the Octor decision and Oliveros decision is that, in my opinion, there's a lot of guys that are power arms, and we hear about all these power arms that the Twins have drafted and that are on their way up, but none of those guys have to be added to the 40-man roster. So that's part of why I'd say let's keep those guys on there. Nick Birdie will probably show up at some point. Jake Reed could show up at some point. With health, a guy like Zach Jones or Mason Militakis could show up anytime during the year. So, I mean, I think I'd feel comfortable with the first six that I listed, and then after that, it's kind of an open competition.
Yeah, I think Mike Pelfrey probably has a pretty good shot of being in that bullpen.
Yeah, I would
Depending on
agree.
who rounds out the rotation. I would like to think that Alex Meyer and Trevor May could start the year in the rotation. Um, I don't necessarily think that's going to be the truth. I hope May does. I hope Meyer gets an opportunity quick. But what does that mean for a guy like Tommy Malone? Would he be even worth it in the bullpen? Um, I guess I don't know. I feel like there's other guys I'm overlooking as well. But I think that's the best your team is going to be is when you start taking these starters that can't get it done and turning them into really, really effective relievers. And I think we've seen that all over baseball this year with Betances, the guy that was traded to the Orioles. I can't think of who that was. The lefty, is it Andrew Miller?
Andrew Miller,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, you're taking these failed starters and converting them into dominant relievers. Glenn Perkins, you know. Um, so I'd like to think that that's what your bullpen could consist of. Sprinkle in the guys that can throw some gas like Nick Birdie and go from there. Now with the Twins' victory tonight, switching gears a little bit, they've obviously moved another game up on the Diamondbacks, who were sitting for the first pick. Rangers, I don't know how they did tonight, but they were relatively close, and the Rockies as well. So the Twins currently sit in the 5th draft spot, um, and that was before tonight's game. And I'm pretty confident that when it's all said and done, the Twins are probably going to draft in that 5th spot too. Um, Depending on what happens here, I don't see them, moving up or moving down too much. So we'll talk more about that next week. Hopefully, we'll have some managerial coaching news for you, as well as some um, roster news. That's kind of our hope. There will not be a Twins game next Tuesday night, so you'll just have to hang out with us and talk Twins. Seth, do you have any closing words? Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see what happens over the next week because the season will end on Sunday. It's very possible they make a managerial decision and their coaching decisions as early as Monday. And I think we should think about it. If the Twins make some of those types of decisions, specifically if they did pick a different manager or something changed at the GM position, we might have to consider a show.
Yeah, it might be a little bit later because I got some obligations coaching football until about 9 o'clock, but we could probably make that happen.
We'll see. I mean, obviously, I just think there's a lot that'll happen with the end of the season, and then we can talk about kind of try to put a ribbon or a bow or whatever on the season as well. Maybe MVP talks, things like that. So
Right.
definitely give us some ideas of what you would like to hear us talk about from week to week, and maybe even let us know some ideas for possible guests.
Yeah, if you want, it's amazing. If you want a guest, just tell Seth. He'll make it happen. I've worked on people for months, and then Seth just gets it done in like a day. I don't know what it is. I don't know
It's
how he
hard
does it.
work.
It's like Nick Punto and Ron Gardenhire. He had something. I don't know what it was. Seth just got
It's not
something.
what you know.
Sometimes it is, I think. All right. Anyway,
Yep.
we're gonna
I think
close
we're
up
done.
shop. We're gonna close up shop. Tell all your friends about us, and we'll see you next Tuesday night. So long.